Hi everyone, this is my run on the new Abyss Miss Memoria Sub 1 Part 6, which is a level 185 stage. And as always, I will be giving a quick overview of the stage and the party setup before entering the battle itself. So this stage has 3 waves, and the first wave is a pair of Sergeant Imps, and the second wave is a pair of the Crust Beetle, and the third and final wave consists of a single Dark Bahamut. And the code requirements for this stage is a blue crystal character, black crystal character. One of your party members need to be a dagger user, and at least one of your party members need to be from Final Fantasy IX series. So the challenge in this stage in particular is that there are a number of AoE HP attacks. So for example, on wave 1, the Sergeant Imps has an attack called Calamity Bomber. So if you see him targeting all, it's a signal that it's about to use this attack because it's the only AoE attack it has. The special thing about Calamity Bomber is that it's a 100% HP damage. So if it has, for example, 10,000 Brave, when it does its Brave attack, it will then deal 10,000 HP damage to each party member. Secondly, the Crust Beetle also has an AoE HP attack in the form of Crust Disaster. But beyond that, the Crust Beetle is also dangerous once it is in the Hatred Power state. Because in this state, if it breaks any of your party members with Blaze or Giant, or no, if it's Brave attack, Blaze or Firm Horn, it will automatically follow up this attack with an HP attack in the form of Giant Pincers. And of course, on the last wave, Dark Bahamut has the well-known Mega Flare attack, which is a very devastating group Magic Brave and HP attack. So this fight really prioritizes having a tank in your party to really mitigate a lot of these HP attacks. Likewise, especially on the second wave, having a tank that can absorb the brave hits without getting broken will help you negate the automatic Giant Pincer attack, because especially if you can avoid getting broken by the Blaze attack. So having a tank is quite important. The tricky part of this fight then is to try to fit in a tank while still meeting the requirements of the code. So based on that, I decided to first have Basch as my tank. Basch is notable especially for this fight because he redirects all AoE HP damage onto himself. So for example, on the first wave, the Calamity Bomber will only then damage Basch. Likewise, on the second wave, the Crust Disaster, and on the final wave, the Mega Flare will only lead to Basch taking damage. The Calamity Bomber will still deal significant amount of damage to Basch even with the HP damage reduction, because he's essentially absorbing about 30,000 HP damage per attack. But so long as you have Basch LD and you have his Indomitable passive up, he is virtually unkillable. Then the other two party members I used is really to fill in the party requirements. So for the blue crystal character, I used Zidane because he's also a dagger user. And for Zidane, my setup is only at 0 out of 3, as you can see here, because I didn't want to use ingots on him. And for Vivi, he is fully built with his EX and his LD, and I put in 3 Rinoa spheres on him, 2 refine as one of the actual sphere. Now, the risk of using Vivi here is that Vivi's Doomsday and subsequent Ember follow-up attacks has an HP drain on your party mechanic, while Basch Indomitable will always heal him back up to 50% HP after he takes HP damage. This doesn't work when his HP is actually drained away through Vivi. So if for example he gets drained through Vivi's Doomsday and he drops below 50%, he can die through a hit that way because his last stand will not be active when he's below 50% HP. So you do have to be a bit cautious pairing Basch with Vivi, and if Vivi were to bring Basch below 50%, you will need to quickly heal Basch up through his second skill or through his AA ability so that he maintains at least 50% HP at all times to be safe. At 50% HP and having the Indomitable passive, he is really unkillable because any attack that will kill him will still reduce him to 1 HP from last stand, and he will then automatically heal back to 50% HP. Now the other thing to note here is that if you have a party of Vivi, Zidane and Basch, the only healing ability lies in Basch, and Basch can only heal himself. This means that Vivi and Zidane will not be able to heal for the entire fight, and they will eventually get to very low HP levels just because of Vivi's attacks draining their HP. So you do need to be careful. With Basch, as long as you keep the lock-on debuff on the enemies, most of the danger is really mitigated because all the enemy will be targeting Basch, and all the AoE HP damage will also be redirected to him. On the second wave though, for the Crust Beetle, with this party setup, this is the most dangerous wave, and that's because the Crust Beetles can actually cleanse all debuffs, including the frame debuffs, when they use Hatred Power or a Hatred Power Plus. So this means that if they use either form of Hatred Power, they'll actually cleanse away the lock-on debuff, and they can potentially start targeting Vivi or Zidane and potentially kill them off. So for this reason, each time you see them use Hatred Power, you need to quickly reapply the lock-on debuff with Basch again before they start hitting Vivi and Zidane. I also feel that with this party setup, the best time to summon is on the second wave, so that you can potentially mitigate the risk of having Vivi or Zidane killed off by the Crust Beetles. The other reason for this also is, of course, if you summon on the third wave, Dark Bahamut will use Mega Flare at the end of the summon, so really you rather not summon on the third wave. And besides, Dark Bahamut is pretty easy if you have Basch in the team, because Mega Flare is really mitigated through having Basch. The summon of choice for me here is Odin, and to me, if you have Vivi in a party, the best two summons will either be Odin or Leviathan, because the first time Vivi uses Doomsday, you will automatically trigger the bonus passive from Odin and Leviathan, and in this case, because I don't have any support characters in the party, having the extra 30% attack really helps to maintain damage throughout the entire fight. So that's it, let's head into the battle. I'll see you there. Okay, so starting on the first wave, the first thing I wanted to mention is that Vivi only has 3 skill users of his LD, and so you really want to try to space them out as much as possible across the 3 waves. The first 2 waves are actually heavily magic resistant, but because Vivi can apply fire resist down, it isn't much of an issue. Notably, on the second wave, the Crust Beetles themselves are naturally weak against fire, so Vivi wouldn't have any issue on the second wave as well. I tend to start off the fight with Vivi using his EX first, and that's mainly because his LD will also help to recharge his EX meter, and therefore I think it's a better rotation starting off with his EX at the start of the fight. Applying the fire resist down through his EX also maximizes damage from his LD. with Basch, you will want to immediately use his LD to get the Indomitable passive, and thereafter throughout the entire fight, you need to keep an eye on the skill count on his Indomitable and only recast his LD once the Indomitable passive is about to wear off. And lastly, since Zidane is stuck at 0 out of 3, he doesn't have any HP++ attack. And he tends to run out of skill users near the end of the fight. So you want to be a bit more conservative with Zidane's skill users. In particular, after he uses his EX, he gets the Mark ability. And you want to try to sometimes just use the plain HP attack if Zidane happens to have quite a lot of Brave. Even if it's not kept Brave, because the skill users are important on the later part of the fight here. Okay, so here you can see the Sergeant Im using Calamity Bomber, and with Basch in the party, only Basch takes the damage, but he still took about more than 10,000 HP damage. The amount is really irrelevant because his Indomitable will always heal him back to 50% HP. But you do want to be careful, as I mentioned at the start of the video. You can see here that Vivi's Ember at follow-up attack has now drained Basch below 50% HP. So at times like this, you want to quickly use either his EX or his S2 to heal past the 50% mark again. Okay, so here my Vivi has run out of his LD skill users, and because he only has 3, I decided to actually split his LD skill users across the 3 waves, so I will not use his LD until the second wave has started. And anyway, the Sergeant Ims are low enough that you can actually comfortably finish them off with just regular attacks. Okay, so wave 2 is the most tricky wave here, and you really need to keep an eye on who they are targeting, and especially when they cleanse debuffs, when they use hatred power, you want to quickly apply lock on again with Basch. So here I quickly use his Fulminating Darkness to apply the lock-on debuff. I do note that he is below 50% health here, so you want to quickly heal him up. If you feel an HP damage is incoming and he has less than 50% health, it's the best time to use his AA to provide him some emergency healing. So here I use his AA to heal him up a little bit, so that I can use the plus version of his EX. Now, although both Vivi and Zidane are now in the red, there really isn't any danger to them so long as the lock-on debuff remains. As long as the enemies are having the lock-on debuff, Vivi and Zidane can't actually die. I summon here because Class Beetle A doesn't have lock-on debuff anymore, and there's always a risk that he will regen Brave and kill off Vivi. So for this reason, I decided to pop my summon here so that I have the extra few turns to reapply lock-on with Basch. So at this point again, Vivi has run out of his Memorial buff through his LD, and I decided not to use his third and final LD until the final wave has started. The Class Beetles are down to about 20% health, and the key thing here is to try to kill them off as close as possible to each other, because when one beetle dies, the remaining will actually enrage. Cross Beetle B doesn't have lock-on debuff anymore, but luckily he's still targeting Basch at this point. So I decided to just use a turn to use Basch EX here. Okay, so Crush Disaster isn't any danger so long as Basch has at least 50% health remaining. And here you see that he heals back up to 50% again. And both Vivi and Zidane doesn't take any damage. So same thing here, even two back-to-back Crush Disasters doesn't do anything actually. So I quickly use Fulminating Darkness to reapply lock-on again. Okay, so if you manage to make it until the final wave is very easy because Bahamut's Mega Flare is mitigated by having Basch. You just need to keep Basch above 50% HP at all times. So here, you really just need to go all out. I use Vivi's remaining LD and then pile on the damage. At this point, Zidane is running really low on skills also, so you want to weave in a couple of Brave or HP attacks into his rotation so that he lasts throughout the entire fight. In particular, if he's very near to a full EX meter, you preferably want to use Brave or HP attacks to charge up the remaining EX meter for Zidane. So Bahamut can use Dark Charge to give himself some generic buffs. And looking back at this fight, he does this when he's at 70% HP and again at 50% HP. And I think the optimal way of approaching this is to try to save 2 each of Zidane's Stellar Circle and Free Energy, because both of his ability users will apply debuffs, and you can actually displace some of the buffs that Dark Bahamut grants himself. So here you see that I displaced some of his buffs, but unfortunately I ran out of free energy, so the next time he uses Dark Charge I will not be able to displace this. Here I eat a Mega Flare, but again with Indomitable up on Basch, Mega Flare actually does nothing beyond bringing Basch down to 50% HP. And Vivi has run out of his LD buff, but the Bahamut is pretty low, and since the danger of Mega Flare is mitigated, it's really just spending the remaining 10 turns or so to slowly whittle down Dark Bahamut. And that's it. As always, if you enjoyed the video, do leave a like, leave a comment, or subscribe. It really helps a lot. Until then, see you in the next Chaos fight. Bye bye.